Welcome to MindMakers. I'm John Kim, co-founder and CEO of Sandbird. On the show, I talk to the people who are building the next generation of artificial intelligence, from technologists, founders to executives who are shaping the future of AI and its real-world impact. Today, I'm joined by Cody Coleman, the co-founder and CEO of Coactive AI. This is a really interesting company because you guys are pioneering the enterprise AI, but beyond text, to multimodal, to audio, video, image processing, in terms of making sense of the unstructured data for the enterprises. So, and also your unconventional career journey kind of stood out. It's really inspiring as you are leading the company today. If I'm not mistaken, you were raised in South Jersey?
Yes.
The East Coast? So you discovered your passion for computer science, which led you down to the wonderful institutions like MIT and Stanford. Also went through amazing companies like Google, Meta, also Pinterest, another YC founder of a company. Ultimately, you're like, you know what? All these people are starting this company are not smarter than me. I should start my own, Coactive AI.
Yeah.
I'm making stuff up, obviously. So, well, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, before we start, we'd love to kind of go deeper into your journey of Coactive AI. So maybe we'd love to get the audience to better understand about your early part of the journey.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a nerd. At my core, growing up, I was a nerd. I was a kid that, loved playing with Legos and building things. And, I was glued to the Science and Discovery Channel growing up. So, it's probably not surprising that I then went on to go to MIT, and not only go to MIT, excel there. I kind of became effectively the king of the nerds. I was the president of the Honor Society for 2 years and then decided to cap that off and become, get my PhD at Stanford and then start a Silicon Valley company. So that's kind of like the story of me kind of at a surface level. But if you dig deeper, all of a sudden that's probably the last thing that anyone expected, to be here in Silicon Valley as a founder, as a leader in AI, when you understand kind of the background and the humble beginnings I came from. And I'll spare my TED Talk and I'll give you the Spark Notes. I grew up while my mom was in prison. Then I was put into foster care and then later adopted by my maternal grandparents. And we just grew up in poverty. I went to a poor public high school in New Jersey. We were ranked 300 out of 322 schools. And that contrast and that, distance traveled is the thing that I love about technology. The thing that I love about computer science is that it's so accessible. The idea that someone like me, growing up in the middle of nowhere in foster care and then adopted by my maternal grandparents, could actually go with a computer and an internet connection, actually create something that would impact the lives of, thousands, millions, and maybe one day billions of people around the world.
Man, I'm getting goosebumps already. I'm sure those formative experiences really kind of shaped you even differently as a leader. Maybe it's kind of off rails a little bit, but what are some of the words that really matters to you? Would it be personal values, or are there certain words that you feel like it really embodies how you approach life?
Yeah. So it's a really great question. It's kind of funny, actually. I was just catching up with someone that was a mentor of mine for a very long time. Her name's Angela Duckworth. She's known in psychology. And she was actually reminding me of when we first met. And she asked me, what were kind of the things or my superpowers? And my answer to her was, growing up, I had kind of this, naive optimism and endless positivity. And I think that those two elements that, I had ever since, going to undergrad at MIT have stayed with me throughout my entire career and have actually become these kind of superpowers for me even to today. So that's maybe me when I think about kind of as an individual. But then when I think about, teams and organizations, the words that come to mind are things like, of course, grit, being able to have passion and perseverance to be able to stick with things for a very long time. And I think that's something that has played out, in my personal life and my personal journey, as well as I've seen it play out in the organizations I've been a part of. Because I think often people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. And I've seen that play out kind of, multiple cycles in my life. MIT was like that. Stanford was like that. Coactive has been like that.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, I used to be a professional gamer back in the days. I was an undefeated champion in Unreal Tournament in Korea.
Oh my gosh,
World's number 3
Unreal
player.
Tournament was like my game. Like
Quake, Unreal, played a
that's
lot of
awesome.
those. So how has your upbringing shaped your perspective on what technology could do? And you kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about that gaming experience too.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. For me, it was funny, like growing up, I actually wanted to be a video game developer. Like when I first thought about going to college, like my dream job was to work at Epic Games, the creators of Unreal Tournament and the Unreal Engine. Because for me, like growing up in kind of my like environment, it was constant chaos. We racked up something like 65 police reports in the like 2 years that we had the house that I grew up in.
Wow.
So it was just constant chaos all the time. And for me, video games were really an escape from that, a way to get out of this kind of chaos and environment and go to a completely different world. And to me, that was one of the things that like blew me away initially about just computers. Like the idea that like with a computer, you could actually create an entire virtual world that you could get lost in. And, it actually kind of leads to like where I see, Coactive, when I like play it forward, 10, 20 years in the future, we're kind of going through this like amazing moment in time where really kind of the digital and the physical worlds are blurring together. Because for the first time ever, machines can finally see the world like we do. Because of AI, we can actually interact and they can interact with us in a much more natural way. Whereas when you think about human-computer interactions in the early days of computing, really the dial is very much, as human beings, we had to go and bend ourselves to the needs of a computer. You had to input information, whether that be initially in punch cards to
assembly,
to a keyboard and mouse. Yeah.
Wow. And I heard you're actually the first student from your high school to go to MIT.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Like, what role did that kind of milestone play shaping your career, your view of the world, and also like your access to kind of CS education is like becoming more valuable?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a transformational experience. I was a nerd growing up. And when I got to MIT, I was like, these are my people.
Yeah.
And also what happened was, growing up in South Jersey, you didn't have software engineers, just roaming on the street. So I had no idea what computer science could really do. All I really knew was video games, and during high school, I had learned how to program and create websites. I thought that was all there was to computer science. But going to MIT, for me, it opened my eyes in terms of the possibilities and the impact that I could have while pursuing my passion for computer science.
It's awesome. And you both at Google and Stanford, you saw this opportunity for AI probably very early on. I remember like studying like evolutionary algorithm for the first time in neural networks. I'm like, oh my God, it's like so cool to see something, even like simulating how simple non-animal objects, and you train it to like do certain fitness functions and start to move around like an animal. So kind of simulating those things. I just remember feeling like blown away, like the possibilities.
Yeah.
What moments kind of for you stood out as like the turning points in realizing how big AI could possibly be?
Yeah. It was actually, there's kind of 3 core moments. So first, I think it was after my sophomore year at MIT, I did an internship at Google under product quality operations, which was trust and safety before that was a thing. And really, I was working on detecting spam on Google Maps. And that's where I got first exposed to AI and to this tool that was called Dremel at the time, which then later became Google BigQuery. And that was the first exposure that I had to, a practical use of AI to solve like a problem at scale that actually had a broad benefit, Previously, without AI, you had people taking over listings and things like that. So that was the first practical application of AI that I saw and that I had a hand in. And then later, towards the end of my time at MIT, my senior year, this is when digital learning and massive open online courses became a thing. And for me, I saw that as such a massive opportunity to take the transformational experience that I had, gone through because of education, because of the time that I had at MIT, and actually scale that up and democratize that to people around the world. And also, because we were able to collect all of this information and all of this data about how people learn, we could actually, for the first time, leverage AI to learn how humans learn and improve and intervene to help create a more personalized learning experience to really help people unlock their potential. And that, to me, was the research. That was the reason that I originally applied to do my PhD at Stanford, was because I thought that was so powerful and amazing, and just kind of got to, what my mission in graduate school was really to leverage my passion for computer science to have a positive impact on society. And I could see no better application than that at the time than applying machine learning to education. So that was a second kind of really motivating and inspiring experience for me. And then before I did my PhD, I took a gap year because, for family reasons, I wanted to help out my grandmother, who was suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. So I worked in finance, doing algorithmic trading in order to save up money to be able to help my family out. And then once again, it's AI applied to finance. So by the time that I got to Stanford and I was doing my PhD in 2016, I could already see that the world was going to move from web applications to intelligent applications that were powered by AI, that were self-improving, that were more personalized than anything that we had ever been able to create before. But also, at that same moment in 2016, the only people that were able to leverage AI were the biggest kind of leading tech organizations in the world, Google, Meta, Pinterest, and everyone else was kind of left out because, unlike the computer science that I, kind of loved, with web applications, with intelligent applications, you needed, a tremendous amount of hardware, a DGX1, and a tremendous amount of data to do anything. So I basically spent my PhD focused on democratizing that and bringing down those barriers.
Wow, I love that. And especially when you talk about your own experience and also the MOOC, right? The kind of using technology to really democratize also the learning or educational.
Yeah.
I wonder, maybe down the road, maybe that could be one of your philanthropic angles. I want to kind of give back to society and create more accessibility for better education through technology and perhaps AI.
Yeah.
I do believe education, especially for kids' education, can really level the playing field for equality of equal access to opportunities.
Yeah.
What you were saying is really lands deeply with me.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about Coactive AI for a minute. It was born out of your unique insight into this space of multimodal, the unstructured data, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people still is focusing a lot on text data.
Yeah.
Some are getting to image generation, stuff like that, but your view is mixing that image, audio, and video data, but also really untapping the opportunity for enterprises. Tell us maybe more about what is the problem you're trying to solve and what is kind of your unique perspective into creating Coactive.
Yeah. So the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve is that we want to make it easy to search and analyze visual content by effectively turning images and video, content into signals, to be able to bridge the gap between kind of the existing, tools and the world of big data today with this kind of massive ocean of unstructured content that's out there. And, the initial inspiration from this kind of came from a multitude of things. First, it really kind of centered around my time at Stanford while I was doing my PhD, where I joined this lab, the Dawn Project at Stanford, and I was advised by Matej Zaharia. And the goal of the group was to democratize AI, which really resonated with me. And in my mind, I broke that down to kind of three things. It was the amount of computational resources that were necessary, the amount of data that was necessary for AI to learn your intent, and then, three was the expertise. And I spent my PhD focused on those first two. I ended up creating this benchmark called MLPerf, which became the industry standard benchmark for high performance deep learning. That was kind of the first half of my dissertation. And then the second half, tackling the data bottleneck, I was super fortunate to work at Pinterest on their applied ML team, and then at Meta on their applied computer vision team. And for me, that's where this kind of initial kind of light bulb went off, because I saw how these organizations were leveraging their content to drive a tremendous amount of value, through better recommendation, better search, better advertising, better analytics, as well as, minimizing risk, protecting the safety of online communities, as well as copyrighted material. But what I also saw is that it took a tremendous amount of resources, both human resources, a bunch of PhDs like my co-founder Will and I, as well as computational resources, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to create out the infrastructures and systems to do that, not to mention just the time to actually do all of that. And that's where the inspiration for Coactive came from. Could we create a platform and really kind of solidify this kind of emerging playbook around content and AI that we're seeing at these leading companies, and actually create that infrastructure and easy plug and play platform for any organization to really be able to unlock the value of their content. And ultimately, for us, when we think about the big data movement, to move from focusing solely on structured tables to rich unstructured content.
Then maybe for the audience to make it a little bit more tangible, can you walk us through the example of before and after for some of these your clients? And who are your typical clients? Tell us about, maybe could be account names or industry sizes.
Yeah. So we focus a lot on media, entertainment companies, advertising, and retail. So some of our customers include Comcast, NBC, Universal, which we've been working with them for probably close to 2 years now, as they've kind of gone through this entire generative AI journey. We work with Thomson Reuters. We work with also Fandom, which is the world's largest fan entertainment and information platform. It's kind of like Wikipedia for your favorite TV shows, video games, and movies, where they have 350 million monthly active users.
Wow.
And we help them with a wide range of use cases, because we've really taken this to be a platform approach that really helps companies unlock this content flywheel, where it's easy to manage, monetize, and measure their content. So I'll give you a few examples of that. For Thomson Reuters, we actually help them with their platform called Reuters Connect. So Thomson Reuters is a major news signal to the world. They have reporters all around the world capturing, the most pressing stories that are impacting society. And they have a platform called Reuters Connect, which is their marketplace for selling that content and for distributing it to news outlets and journalists around the world. Previously, what they had to do for a journalist or a news outlet coming to their website, they would search for content, and they had to rely on manually entered in metadata that came from the reporters. Now, the problem is manually entering in metadata is incredibly slow, tedious, and expensive. So, frankly, reporters don't do it. So they ended up with low coverage and just low understanding of the content that they had. Where you would search for something even as simple as a Boeing union deal negotiation, or Kamala on SNL, or Trump in an orange vest, any of these things, and you get one result maybe.
Oh, wow.
But with Coactive, what we were able to do is that we were able to pull the context directly from the content.
In audio, video, all that. Yeah.
Exactly. In a highly scalable and secure way. So basically, it was kind of a day and night difference, where you go from getting one result to getting far more relevant results, and far more results in general for the kind of question or the story at hand that you're trying to tell. We also help them with analytics use cases. Maybe taking another customer, we help Fandom generate metadata, where previously, they constantly have users uploading images to their platform, and the vast majority of that content's great, but a small fraction, less than 1% of it is really, problematic content that violates their community guidelines.
So moderation becomes super important.
Exactly.
Nice.
And they basically, before Coactive, had to have a human being review every single image that was uploaded to their platform, about 60,000 a day, 2 million, a month. But after Coactive, they were able to automate that, take the review time down from something that would be 2 days to 250 milliseconds, reduce their overall cost as well by 50%, and just drive more value and create better experiences.
Because I think moderation is like one of those used to be labor-intensive jobs, but it had a huge mental toll on a lot of those people. So attrition rates were usually very, very high.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who worked in those kind of content moderation industry for a long period of time would suffer some kind of a mental health issues too. So I do think it's a great example of where technology can really help out humanity's not only productivity, but really the happiness of the society. So I think it's like a true win-win scenario. That's awesome. And you have a deep background in technology, right? So especially like studying the PhD. So how do you kind of balance between building out a product that speaks to the technical audience and obviously communicating to a technical audience with technical value proposition would make total sense, but to continue to expand your market opportunities, and especially when you're selling your solution, probably a lot coming from maybe non-technical budgets organizations too. So how do you kind of communicate the balance between the technology side of things, or your value proposition, to, I guess, a non-technical audience?
Yeah. So it's really tough. That's it's one of the big challenges that we have faced early on, is because you have to speak to both of these audiences and stakeholders. But that same challenge can turn into an opportunity where you figure out kind of the dynamics of the organization as well as the dynamics of these different stakeholders. And effectively, what we found is that Coactive acts as a bridge between the two. We enable technical teams, data and product teams to be, focused on, the integration, the performance, all the customization and the downstream things that they want to do through our APIs and our core platform. But at the same time, we have our web interface and agentic interfaces to enable non-technical people to actually get work done. Because when you think about it as a non-technical or as a business user, as a domain expert, you really kind of care about your workflow and how easy it is for you to kind of get the things that you need to get done for your job, as well as like you want to be able to have something that fits into your existing workflow rather than having to, deal with a lot of change. So we thought, in the way that we've created our applications on top of Coactive, and we've created our web interface and agentic interfaces, is really thinking about the full workflow that business users need in order to be able to drive value with their content, while at the same time targeting our APIs to make it easy for developers, for technical teams to have the tools that they need to actually connect, their content with multimodal AI to be able to actually unlock that value in an incredibly secure and scalable way.
It's interesting you mentioned API, because we also started out as a messaging or chat API company, really powering messaging. And actually, Sam Altman also recently gave a similar interview where he kind of quotes Paul Graham. It's like, just make APIs. Whatever you do, build APIs around it. And that was like really a big unlock for OpenAI back in the days, because they had a technology, but they didn't know what people were going to use for. So they ended up creating an API so that developers can play around with it. Then they start to notice patterns on what they're doing with it. One was copywriting. So companies like Jasper and all those companies came out of that. But the other was like just people want to have conversation with the models, trying to understand how this thing work and what is possible, capable of doing. So then they basically slapped on the interface, the chat interface on top of the API, which became the ChatGPT. Now it's like kind of taken over the world in a way. So I think API is a really interesting way to collect signals on what people are looking to do. I think the phrase was like, let the 100 flowers blossom. How do we make the API more universally accessible so that you can observe more usage patterns from your own customers? It's really cool.
And we went through a similar thing actually as well. We started off just entirely APIs, but we very quickly discovered, as we were working with customers and we were getting their ideas and their feedback, we're fundamentally talking about visual content. So not being able to show the content was like a huge hindrance to people being able to see the value and being able to realize how it could be integrated into their system. So we ended up creating our web interface, kind of sprinting towards that. I think in our, kind of 3 months into the company, we're like, we need to hire a full stack web developer in order to help us with that.
That's awesome. Do you guys build your own models, or are you using multiple different models that's publicly available? How is your kind of tech stack behind the scene?
So we chose to be model agnostic. We're not a foundation model company. We're not building a foundation model company. Instead, we think about how can we leverage the best in breed foundation models for the use cases and business constraints of our customers. And we take and what we've seen is that there's no one model that's going to rule them all. Actually, it really depends on the constraints of the business and the use cases. What model makes sense? What type of content are you processing? And also, you'll even have multiple models to be able to pull out different signals depending on that use case.
Yeah, we call that MOMS, mixture of models.
Yeah.
Interesting. I had a breakfast with CPO of Anthropic. So he was kind of talking about how they look at the landscape between OpenAI and Claude, and which models are better for what.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how this competitive dynamic really kind of benefits everyone else.
Yeah.
Because all these models are just getting better and better at everything, like text, but also now image and video. But I think, especially in the multimodal side, I think model still has a long way to go in terms of just being 100%. Able to process information very, very quickly compared to how fast it can do with text information. So kind of really excited about the future. But also can you get multimodal capabilities? Probably that's right in your wheelhouse. A little bit on going back to Coactive's value proposition. So other than the operational things of reducing tagging times or reducing the amount of moderation workload, what are some of the KPIs that your customers care about outside of those functional areas?
Yeah, I would say it's 3 things. The first thing is just time to value or time to market for their own product initiatives and the things that they're trying to build. Because what we've seen over the past kind of 2 years is just the sheer impact and velocity that AI has and how it's changing every single enterprise and industry. And no one wants to be left behind. No one wants to be a lagger. So the fact that Coactive can help you productionalize multimodal AI, actually do it in a scalable, cost-effective way, as well as deal with all of the kind of data orchestration and all the other pieces that are necessary to being able to have, an enterprise-grade solution is a tremendous amount of value and allows them to move faster and do more than they otherwise would.
Yeah.
With that, it goes hand in hand with TCO. Total cost of ownership. Rather than having to build and maintain, what are kind of these building blocks and orchestration pieces, that gets abstracted away with Coactive, with our kind of modular approach where you can kind of plug and play, what's the best model into our system and be able to unlock that value without having to build all the infrastructure for it. And then finally, one thing that I think is missed a lot is just quality, and specifically quality on that last mile of customization that enterprises need. Because these foundation models, they're massive, they're expensive to train, and they have a good general understanding, but they often miss, they'll get you to let's say 60 to 70% of the way there, but they often miss the kind of enterprise specifics that you need to be able to close that last mile and derive enterprise value.
All right. Since ChatGPT took the headlines in it's been 2 years? A little bit more than 2 years now. I think most of consumer products especially focus on text, obviously, and we probably use it on a day-to-day basis. Every single email that I send to our teachers today goes through ChatGPT because English is my second language. I think ChatGPT is my best English teacher at this point. What do you think the industry is not fully getting about this, the potential when it comes to understanding the world we live in, which has a lot more multimodal aspects?
Yeah, it's a super great question. And it's, fundamentally, we're storytellers, and the way that we think and just the world that we are in is an incredibly visual world. We think, visually, and as a result, now that we have technology that allows us to capture and create content, more cheaply, more effectively than ever before, more and more of our everyday life is being captured in images and video. Right now we're filming a podcast that's being captured, but you think about like whether it be work, the fact that like we have increasingly have meetings over Zoom calls. When you think about the way that we communicate, the fact that we've moved from text to people using, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube to be able to communicate with one another, to be able to share kind of funny memes or communicate ideas, or even search for restaurants or places to eat. Like our search engines are actually becoming more visual. And then when we think about, taking action, if you just look at, e-commerce and retail, we're increasingly making purchasing decisions based off of images and video. So this content, this world is increasingly becoming visual first. And yet the systems that we've developed are not good at understanding it. You have classic database systems which view an image or a video file as a blob, just a binary, thing of storage. And then, on the other side, you have, as you mentioned, we're in the very early days of AI and in incredibly early days in multimodal AI, like being able to actually pull out all the different signals and understand the full modality and context of that content is really, really critical. And being able to actually kind of accelerate that understanding accelerates our ability to understand and interact with the world around us.
Yeah. And language, throughout human history, language only has been around for, tens of thousands of years, probably? But our visual understanding of everything existed for hundreds of thousands of years throughout the entire evolution of our species. And even the concept of like mathematics, counting stones, making spheres, like being able to calculate or predict the distances, how fast we're moving, all had to do with our survival skills. Mm-hmm. So even the visual and math skills are more intimately tied to our brains, predates a lot of the language. So, and kind of thinking, is our current LLM model sufficiently evolved to optimize for the visual, the multimodal, the spatial understanding? And my gut says like there could be some bigger unlock that's going to happen in the AI industry as the model evolves to factor in a lot of these spatial data. And a lot of these multimodal, almost treating multimodal as a primary source of data and the outputs. And I think Dr. Fei also created a startup that's kind of focused on that too, so which I think is pretty awesome. Yeah. And perhaps Coactive will benefit a lot from those unlocks in the newer generation of models.
Exactly.
Anything to comment there?
Oh yeah, first off, I completely agree in terms of, and I think about this often in terms of like the way that we developed, text really started out kind of for convenience, kind of compression or like efficiency, not because that's the way that we naturally understand the world. But now we're fundamentally kind of, making a turn in society and in humanity where now it's actually cheap and easy to create visuals and to create potentially entirely like virtual worlds. When you think about something like World Labs and the work that like Fei-Fei's created, and Fei-Fei's a dear friend. She was an informal advisor to me during my PhD. And we engineered Coactive with this in mind because the pace of the field is only going to accelerate. We're only going to continue to see more and more improvements in terms of, foundation models and specifically multimodal AI models as they're actually starting to ingest, and process more of this content. As we're getting more sophisticated use cases, we're going to see kind of such a rapid evolution. And that's why we designed the system to actually be model agnostic so that we could enable people to keep up and to be able to ride that wave of improvement, technological progress in AI and multimodal AI, as we're going to see this kind of continue to improve for the years and decades to come.
Yeah. And then I think one of the other data points that are overlooked, but I think will be utilized a lot more, is kind of the sensor data that now a lot of these robotics will have. There's so much abundance of data that's being captured by robots, and especially robots enabled by AI. I'm an investor in a couple of robotic startups, which does a lot of last mile delivery, logistics in warehouses, satellites. There's so much data that I'm sure it's like not available to the public.
Yeah.
But with the right model that's specialized in multimodal or spatial knowledge, I think they'll benefit a lot using some of those data that's being generated, petabytes and petabytes of data, right? So that's super, super fascinating. What kind of caught my eye too was like you started this company in 2021.
Yeah.
This was like pre-ChatGPT.
Yeah.
When the AI was still kind of look with a squint of eyes, like, hey, it's AI things like these are all lunatics. Like I was we're kind of starting to see a little bit glimpse of that.
Yeah.
But you had this vision of starting this company before the boom. So I'm guessing a lot of VCs, even at the forefront of that investment, probably were doubting like, okay, like maybe text is not even working. Like, why are you doing multimodal? Why are you doing this at all? Like, what were some of the early challenges you faced?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I'll never forget, even like, Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, people that were even specialized in data and, the big data movement. I remember going to investors and they were asking like, first off, why AI and why are you focusing on images and videos? Every company in the world has text. Like, why don't you focus on that instead? And I remember even like embedding vectors and things like that. Like investors were like, what are like embeddings, and at that moment in time, and there were some investors that didn't get it, of course, that like passed on the opportunity. And ultimately, the way that I thought about it in those early days is, from my perspective, being in the field, I could see people that were tackling text as a modality that were already started in 2020 way and making headway. Like OpenAI was already around at that point. There was a number of other companies. Snorkel AI from my lab, they focused, from my same lab at Stanford, they focused on text at that point. And rather than, being late to market, I believe that's better to be early to market, to go where the ball is headed rather than where it is right now, to actually be able to, seize a market opportunity and to be, differentiated and to seize kind of a blue ocean opportunity rather than fighting over what is already or about to be a red ocean.
That's interesting. That was actually one of my theses when I started playing Unreal Tournament. Because back then, Quake, when everything was like the red ocean, all the best players were playing Quake.
Yeah.
I also used to play Quake fairly competitively, one of the top threes in Korea. But then I saw Unreal Tournament come out. I'm like, okay, a lot of smart and good players are not playing this game yet. So I went in there.
Yeah.
There's like no competition. So I was only competing against the new players, noobs.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to win prize money as a 19-year-old. I was like, oh, money's like raining from the trees.
Yeah.
So it felt pretty good. But it really comes down to like, to your point. Later, obviously, a lot of smart players came to Unreal Tournament. The competition arose. But it's like getting into the right market opportunity at the right time. Slightly early, maybe not too early.
Yeah.
I think it's like really great. But you had that insight because you were knee deep into the field of studying at Stanford, and probably you were surrounded by all these like luminaries who kind of had the foresight. Kind of from the industry perspective, beyond the media and entertainment and a couple of industry you mentioned, what other industry stand to benefit most from multimodal in the near term? You feel like you should be looking at this right now. Like you guys don't get it yet, but it's coming for in a good way. What industry should care about this?
Yeah. So at the very beginning, we designed Coactive to be a horizontal platform because as I was doing kind of early user research and market research, I could see all of these different applications across, media, retail, industrial inspection, medicine, all of these different verticals are being impacted by AI because now we fundamentally are being impacted by content and like overwhelmed by producing a tremendous amount of images and videos, whether it be, having cameras on an oil rig, or you think about microscopy where you have microscopes. Have become increasingly automated and high throughput. So now these labs are generating, thousands of pictures of cells that, some poor graduate student intern can't like review all of them. And it was actually quite funny when I was finishing up my PhD and I was thinking about Coactive. I talked to one of my friends that was in the computational biology program. And I told him about the idea of Coactive, based off of my experience at Pinterest and Meta, and he was like, oh my gosh, our lab could use that right now. So that's been kind of a seed that's been in my mind since the very beginning of Coactive. And I think when you look actually across the stack in life sciences and medicine, there's so many different opportunities for multimodal AI and for people to unlock value from images and videos. We talked about kind of the microscope level. You see medical imaging like MRI and radiology, like, MRI machines are becoming increasingly, cheaper and more accessible, where there's even portable MRI machines, where now you're actually capturing this rich information, this rich kind of visual, in a sense, information. And then also you even have at the kind of top of the stack with the rise of telemedicine, now patient care is being captured in videos.
That's awesome. One of my friends' company went public in Korea. They basically do AI imaging for, I guess, not pharma, but medical imaging. They started with X-ray in Korea because in Korea, by kind of universal healthcare, every single citizen does X-rays every few years. So it's like you have this like snapshot of all the X-ray development for every single person in the country. That's 50 million people. It's a vast amount of data that AI can train on. So this whole radiology is probably going to be fully automated with AI, probably already happening around the world. But I hear you on that. But the microscope use case seems really interesting. What is your ideas around examples of AI creating and being used as part of the storytelling? How do you envision that future? And I'm also kind of curious, like you're in the enterprise AI space, but it seems like you're passionate about storytelling too. So like, where does that world connect?
So, first off, I think that storytelling and content creation, like the future of storytelling is that it's going to be increasingly immersive, increasingly personalized, and increasingly interactive. And we're, living in this moment where we're seeing the physical and digital worlds really blur together. I see that kind of just continuing and accelerating. When you think about the combination of, technologies like AR and VR and robotics, like you'll be able to actually, and then, things like world labs and being able to create entire worlds, you'll be able to shift from, the physical reality to digital reality seamlessly. And in the digital world, be able to create, entire worlds by just, a thought or an idea. And we're seeing interfaces to help that become easier and easier. You have things like, of course, there's like Neuralink, but actually out of MIT, there's now this thing called Alter Ego, which can read your brainwaves to actually think about and like predict what you're going to say without you having to say anything. And then you think about robotics and stuff like that, where now you have cameras and the digital world can tactically interact with the world. That's fundamentally redefining how we think about human-computer interactions. And that changes everything. And we fundamentally need kind of a new operating system in order to help, humans and machines work together. And that's the grand vision for Coactive, is to create that system, that operating system that harnesses, the power that we have in these kind of core foundation models in the same way that you had a CPU like Intel and, Windows back in the early days of computing, where you had this kind of core central processing unit that you were able to unlock to enable many different applications with an operating system like Windows. And that's where Coactive comes in, is really kind of creating that platform and that system to marry together content and AI.
Wow. Powerful. And it's like while I was hearing you speak, so almost like it brings you back like the image of movie, seen out of movies like Inception, just by thinking and talking, the world starts to shift around you. And if you really have a hardware that's like as seamless as possible, like the Ready Player One, you just sit in it, do all the work by sheer level of thinking and imagination and talking, like the amount of autonomy, the leverage you have to impact and influence the world digitally is going to be far greater than the amount of impact we can create in the physical world. So I wonder, sometimes I kind of joke to my friends, like, we're not going to be trapped by machines. We're going to walk into machines willingly. Because the dopamine hit we get from these machines, we're already doing that on smartphones, like doom scrolling and whatnot. But in a virtual world, being able to change it and actually get stuff done, and also shape the world just through sheer imagination. That the power, I think that's going to be very intoxicating for many people. So I find that world very exciting and scary in a way.
Yeah.
But unreal. So that might be the unreal, not tournament, but unreal world for us.
Yeah,
Anyways.
there's definitely a balance. It's definitely kind of a fundamental paradigm shift. And it's kind of funny that, technology has followed this cycle. When you think about the early days of computing, it was really kind of computing, with video games and movies. You think of NVIDIA as like a company. Like when I was growing up, NVIDIA was a gaming company. Like
Credit
you only,
cards,
yeah.
Voodoo and NVIDIA.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And to see how we're kind of almost going in a cycle where that same thing is happening now in this next technological evolution and age with AI.
Yeah. I do want to ask you this question. We had a few guests talk about the MIT study finding, your alma mater, finding that 95% of enterprise AI projects are failing due to or creating any ROI for any companies. But kind of from your perspective, what are you seeing? How do you believe enterprises can best adopt AI, especially in your space of multimodal? Like, how do they not become one of those 95% of failures? How do they turn those 5% into success using Coactive?
Yeah. So, with the MIT study, first and foremost, it's just really, really hard to manage change. And I think that's something that it's not just from a technology perspective, but it's from a people perspective. And I think what's happened, or the challenge that we're facing kind of right now, is while we have broad awareness around AI, we're still in the earliest days of this kind of new chapter where we need to wait. Like people know, why they need to use AI. They need to use AI because everyone can see that this is fundamentally going to change everything. But they don't really know what use cases are going to change or how those use cases will change and how their workflows will change going forward. And this is where actually working hand in hand. And this is why for Coactive, we're very focused. Even though we've built a horizontal platform, we're incredibly focused on the verticals. And really, we think about partnering with our customers. The word Coactive means to work together. That's fundamentally how we think about working with our customers and our partners to actually help them be successful through this transformation and help them manage the change associated with it, both on the technical and the non-technical, business domain expert side. And I think that, for a lot of folks and a lot of these enterprise kind of pilots and situations, they start from, one side or the other, either from, here's some cool technology, but they don't understand the business impact or things like that. Or they have a business kind of impact and they're like, AI is going to just magically solve it. Well, there's no free lunch, so you need to be able to actually think about both of those and really kind of act as that bridge between those two stakeholders in order to really unlock value. And the only way that happens is by, being out there in the field, working with your customers, working alongside them, truly partnering with them to see how they are realizing value, to see how they internalize the technology, how they're discovering the what and the how behind the broad why of AI to actually realize value.
So just tactically then, do you also build teams like forward deployment teams?
Yeah.
How do you guys kind of bridge those gaps?
Yeah, it's actually quite funny. Now forward deploy engineers is becoming a common thing and a hot topic here in Silicon Valley. And I was kind of reflecting on it. We kind of stumbled our way into this world of kind of thinking about forward deploy engineers. For us, actually, it started out. What Will and I realized early on in Coactive is that we know technology, we know AI. But we know nothing about the media industry. We nothing. And the media industry is its own different.
Do you watch Netflix?
We watch Netflix.
Okay, you know some.
Yeah. The tip of the iceberg, basically. Yeah. So what we actually did is we ended up hiring Kevin Hill on our team, who had previously worked at Comcast, NBC, Universal before, was VP of marketing, strategic partnerships, and started his own company to actually at first consult with us. And then he became kind of our GM for media entertainment. And that helped us be able to actually bridge the gap, to be able to speak the same language as our customers, understand the pain points of our customers. And, Kevin's a remarkable person, because even though he comes from a non-technical background, he's almost kind of this Renaissance man or engineer, where he actually went deep in learning about technology, learning about how the platform works, teaching himself SQL and all of these things to be able to actually kind of bridge that gap. And that's like a very special thing. And he effectively, probably in the early days, acted kind of like a forward deploy engineer, which is that unique kind of marrying of business knowledge and customer knowledge with technological knowledge.
Yeah, kind of mentioned the three pillars. One was like computational power, second was data, and the third was expertise. And I think it seems like he brought on that expertise from the media and entertainment industry. Kind of like wrapping up one thought there, then we do have one interesting question that we ask. So we like to ask each of our guests a more personal note. So we want to figure out your human prompt. And if you had access to this all-knowing, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent of an AI that does not hallucinate, and it's going to keep the secret to itself, what is that one single prompt that you want to ask to this ultimate AI?
Yeah. So that's a really great question. And when I think about that, on the personal side, my girlfriend, Gabby, she's Guatemalan, and her, parents immigrated from Guatemala to the US. Her dad mainly speaks Spanish and a little bit of English. And I just think about, how do I kind of connect with them? How do I bridge that gap? And I think that, for me, it's been like a personal thing where I want to learn Spanish. Also, my biological father, he was kind of supposedly he was Cuban. So there's also a part of me of connecting even with my own kind of background of learning Spanish kind of with that regard. So that's been like a personal goal for me. So when I think about kind of a prompt that I would ask, an AI to help me on that personal journey, help me actually be able to, develop the skill and to be able to connect with people that are so near and dear to me, I'd probably ask it to build an agent that was a conversational AI that would take on the persona of almost like a dear friend that has infinite patience, infinite kind of, understanding, that's willing to understand where I'm at in Spanish and, bridge that gap and have conversations with me, be that kind of tireless tutor that I can talk with, that will help me take me from my kind of beginner Spanish, intermediate Spanish to fluency, and a set of just natural, fun, engaging conversations as though I'm talking to a dear friend. So building that agent would be the prompt and the context that I would give.
Oh, that's very personal and deeply meaningful. And hopefully that AI agent is also very efficient. So you get the maximal, optimal path to learning. Hopefully you don't fall in love with that AI and recreate the movie Her. What listeners don't know is that we actually sent you a questionnaire ahead of time to gather some personal information. And based on what you provided, we asked AI to come up with a prompt on what you would find most useful to see how it compares to one that you came up with. Yeah. This is what we got. Very, very different. Okay. This is going to be funny.
Awesome.
Build me a fashion roadmap. What to buy, how to wear it, how to upgrade my style step by step without overthinking it. Give me insights into what people are actually wearing at events I attend. Recommend the right stores and brands for my style and budget. And outline the total cost of building a capsule wardrobe that's versatile and timeless. Show me how to combine these pieces into outfits for different settings, from professional to casual. so I can walk into any room with confidence, knowing my style reflects both who I am and who I am becoming.
That's good.
Is this a prompt that you were expecting?
It's actually kind of funny. It's actually like I love the prompt, and actually it'd be incredibly useful to have that. So it's kind of funny, I am a nerd at my core, and like I am a technologist, like, and it's kind of wild to think that 5 years ago, I was a PhD student, and like the thing that I was focused on was just trying to graduate. And, for people that aren't familiar with kind of tech culture or Silicon Valley, it's almost like a badge of honor to like not care about fashion and style. Like I was definitely the PhD student that would wear hoodies, and I'd wear like old shoes until like the soles were coming off and stuff like that. I just did not care about fashion whatsoever, which in Silicon Valley is like, a thing that like can actually be a badge of honor, is that like just, focus on, non-material, materialist things and just driving progress and innovation. But what I very quickly realized, selling into media entertainment, selling into retail, selling into enterprise customers that are based in New York, LA, as well as, internationally in Europe and things like that, that most of the world
Still dresses things.
Yeah.
Wears clothes, yes.
Wears clothes. And it's actually something that is valuable, that can actually help you express yourself and to show up in a way that resonates and connects with another person, the person that you're sitting aside from like on the table. I remember like getting off like the plane to go to New York City to go to like 30 Rock. And I realized as soon as I got into New York City that everyone there is better dressed than people in Silicon Valley. And at first I kind of resented that. I tried to not change my style and things like that. But actually recently, and actually, thanks to my girlfriend, Gabby, I've actually started to appreciate and kind of level up my style from my like graduate student, no style to actually like caring about, fashion and brands and using that as a way to express. I never thought that I would ask myself, and I caught myself where I was like, what shoes should I wear with this outfit?
Wow.
And, I actually found it to be kind of fun. I felt like it was actually a way to be kind of expressive and a way to connect with people, or at least break down the barriers to connection. That's been kind of incredibly valuable and kind of fun.
I sense so much passion right now. And I don't think we ever imagined talking about fashion on this podcast about AI. But I actually resonate with this too, because I travel around the world meeting customers. I was in London not too long ago to attend Wall Street Journal CEO Council event, Davos, right? Whenever you go there, you have to look up the dress code.
Yeah.
And actually try to understand what did that mean? Like you have to look up what people wear. You have to look up photos.
Yeah.
So it is a real problem. And when I do come back and sit in one of these like blue bottle coffees in downtown, and when I look around, people are all wearing just like rounded neck shirts with their company logos, Lululemon pants or whatever, Allbirds shoes. And I'm like, oh yes, my kind of people. It's just so relaxed here. But when I do go elsewhere, I'm like, oh, you do have to kind of dress to the occasion, especially when you're dealing with customers.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a CTO, then you're supposed to look like a little bit more, messed up hair and stuff like that. But then that's considered okay. But if you're the title of CEO, you do have to kind of dress up for the customer too. So it resonates a lot. Anyway, so thank you for sharing your remarkable journey as a person, but also as a founder. And hopefully the Coactive's mission to democratize insights from unstructured data and your vision for the future where a human and machines collaborate and create new wonderful stories. This has been a truly incredible conversation. So thank you so much for coming. And one last question. Where can people learn more about you and the company?
So they can learn more about Coactive by going to coactive.ai. and learn information about the company, and they can follow along on the journey of Coactive, as well as my journey as a person, as a human, as a leader. On LinkedIn, either through our company LinkedIn page for Coactive AI, or following me personally, Cody Coleman.
Nice. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for having me. This was an absolute pleasure just chatting with you, and I feel like we could talk for hours.
Yeah, likewise.